Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Yep, it's really happening. We're finally building up a Yamaha Pacifica. After years of requests, we're going to take this cheap stock Yamaha and build it up into something special. So why are we modding a Pacifica? Well, they're widely available, they're really affordable, and they're built really well. Pretty much a modder's dream. Now, of course, the real reason is because you guys requested it, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity to figure out what kind of aftermarket parts fit and can be used on a Yamaha, and hopefully we'll create something pretty cool. So today we're going to start by stripping that Yamaha bare, and then we're going to go through some aftermarket parts and find out what fits. Here we go. All right, you guys, let's start by talking about what we got and what we're gonna mod. So here we go. As you guys can see, this is the Yamaha Pacifica 112J. Pretty much the sweet spot, in my opinion, for modding because you get good wood. So we got alder, you get maple, you get rosewood, pretty much, great wood. If you go cheaper than the 112, you end up with sort of budget woods from whatever region it's created in. And if you go more expensive, you end up with Alnico pickups and better electronics. So this one's pretty sweet because you get the good wood, but the electronics and the pickups are pretty low end. So I think it's a good category for modding. Now, the other thing to note is when it comes to guitar necks, like if you're doing a Squire or something, you're spoiled for choice or a Fender. Aftermarket companies all over, all different price ranges will give replacement necks. When it comes to Pacificas, not so much. You're pretty much, unless you can find one used on eBay, if somebody's parting out a higher end Pacifica, you're pretty much left with the stock neck. So that's the first thing to note. Obviously, there's not nearly as many parts to mod as like a Fender. So we're going to stick with the stock neck, and when we look at a close-up of the fret ends, it's actually quite nice. Like, this is a very, very affordable guitar, and while you can see some, tooling marks on the fret ends, they're pretty smooth and pretty nice, but we are going to make it even better because as you can see, the fingerboard in between the frets is quite, I don't know, there's just a harsh edge there. So I'm going to take some sandpaper, we're going to roll those fingerboard edges for a very smooth feel up and down the neck, and I'm going to buff up the fret ends even though they're pretty good. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Now when we look at the body, I think the first thing people will notice is it's a swimming pool route, which means we can add any pickup configuration we want. If you want to put 2 humbuckers in there, great. If you want to put 3 single coils, whatever kind of configuration, that is perfect. Now the first mod we are going to do, and of course we'll talk about what trims fit, that's a big one as well, but the first mod we're going to do to the body is simply shield it. As you can see with most affordable guitars, they're not shielded on the inside. Sucks, but it is what it is. Everybody asks what I use. I just use the cheap stuff from Guitar Fetish, but Solo Music Gear, StewMac, any of those companies will, supply this stuff. And it's super easy. All you do is you pull it out, paint it on, done. So easy, very, very easy. So those are the first 2 mods we're going to do. Let's jump in and talk about like the big upgrades. Now, I think one of the first questions people will have is what tuning machines will drop in on my Pacifica, whether they're doing a full build or not. People don't necessarily want to, be drilling holes and all that kind of stuff. They just want to know what's going to fit. Well, when you look at the back of the Pacifica, it looks like a Fender tuning machine is going to work. Sadly, they will not. The pins just don't line up. So they both have 2 locating pins. So it looks like it might work, but totally doesn't. So unfortunately, cheap Fender tuning machines, whether they're from, Mexican guitars or American ones, just won't work. So anyway, since we're doing a high-end build, we are going to go to our standby Graphtech ratios. I've got some old ones from a previous build, also got some blacked out ones. So I think I'm leaning towards blacking out the entire, hardware on this guitar. I think it could look pretty cool. So as you can see, boom, pins line right up. So Graphtech ratios will totally fit. This is actually the first one, so it'll go here. They're all numbered because they have different internal gears, which makes tuning really easy. That's the whole thing with the ratios. And I think, yeah, I think blacking it out could look really good. Let me know in the comments if you think I should go with chrome, if I should stick with blacked out hardware, because I have two options, thankfully, which is pretty cool. So there you go. Graphtech ratios will drop right in. And of course, if you ever go to sell a guitar, keep your old hardware, put it in a Ziploc bag, label it Pacifica. You can put the old hardware back on, keep your expensive tuning machines for your next guitar, because even if it's like an American Fender or something that's very expensive, these are still better than what you'll find on those guitars. So just move them along with whatever guitar you have. Now, sticking with the neck, I also have these Graphtech string trees. Now, I'm hoping I don't have to use any string trees with the staggered height on the tuners. That would be awesome. No string trees means better tuning stability. But if I have to use one, I'm going to use the Graphtechs. Also have a Graphtech Nut. That is a huge win. The locking tuners work, the nut works, and string trees, all of that stuff will fit a stock Yamaha. That's a massive win, especially, you know, since Yamaha doesn't really support the same amount of aftermarket parts as like a Squier or Fender. Having Graphtech, you know, fit this Yamaha, no mods, huge win. All right, so I've got the neck taken care of. I'm going to roll the fingerboard edges, buff up the fret ends and the fret faces, add some locking tuners, new Graphtech nut. If we need Graphtech string tree, that should get the neck playing like a dream. All right, you guys, onto the body. Here is where we're going to be making some absolutely massive upgrades, but let's start with something cosmetic. Obviously, I've got a black guard. I've always loved the red and black aesthetic. So this is just a cheap eBay pick guard. Again, you know, when you're talking about Fenders or Squiers, we're kind of spoiled for choice. When it comes to Pacificas, not so much. So anyway, this is just like a cheap black guard from eBay. So it is what it is, but that's, I think, what we're gonna do. Now, when we're talking about massive upgrades, we gotta address the electronics. So here's, you know, the stock Yamaha ones, small dime-sized pots, cheap plastic switch, cheap wiring, and cheap pickups. Now, you know, it sounds okay. I did a video comparing a stock Pacifica versus a stock, I think it was an Affinity Squier. So if you're interested, you can check that out if you just want to see, you know, what the stock ones are like. That being said, here we go. Here's our upgrade. Again, there's not a lot of choice when it comes to Pacificas. So like no solderless kits I could find. None of that stuff existed. But thankfully, my friends at 920D hooked me up with this Pacifica wiring. And, you know, look at that switch, CTS pots, super high-end wiring. There we go. So we are going to be all set up. So huge thanks to those guys. And again, when we compare it to the stock, oh, I don't even want to look at that after looking at the other stuff. So yeah, anyway, this is going to be an absolute massive upgrade. So that's going to be our electronics. We got our black guard, upgraded pots and switches. Now, here is an interesting product I've never ever used before, but we're going to add it for our Ultimate Pacifica. Let's check this out. So this is a super thick, solid brass trem claw that locks in your springs. This one is from Tone Claw. So I've never upgraded this part on any of my builds before, so it should be interesting. I'd like to do a tone test, you know, something solid brass and heavy like this versus, you know, just the cheap pot metal ones that come on guitars, to see if it actually, you know, will improve your tone. Certainly the part is way better, but anyway, we're going high end on the Pacifica, so we're gonna add it. So we've got a new pickguard, new electronics, and a new trem claw. We've got two big ones left to do, pickups and trem. Here we go, let's jump in and see what works. Now, as you guys can see, the Yamaha sports a vintage style 6-screw trem system. Definitely an area we need to upgrade. So here's the stock trem. Yeah, basically exactly what you'd see on, you know, like a low-end Squier or whatever. Very thin, very, very basic. Definitely an area we want to upgrade, and certainly, you know, contributes to some, you know, tuning issues on a guitar like this. So this has got to go, and even if a Fender one would fit on here, which I don't know if it would not be much of an upgrade, you know, from a Squier or from a Made in Mexico Strat or whatever. So we're going to go into the parts bin here and check out a couple options. Now, if you guys might remember from the channel, I've got the Floyd Rose rail tail right here, and I don't have the saddles on because I was seeing if this would fit on the Yamaha. And you know what? It absolutely does. This is one of the heaviest bridges I've ever used. Solid brass, just an absolute beast of a bridge. And it absolutely works. So the only thing I had to do to make it work is there's little sliders on the front that you can slide the sustain block here forward or backwards, because near as I could tell is the distance between, you know, the attachments here and the trim. There's a little lip right here, and I think that lip is what is the main difference between like a Fender and the Yamaha. So a person could just take like a Dremel tool or just shave this back, and I think most aftermarket bridges could be made to work. In this case, all I had to do was just slide the block and, you know, perfect fit. And you guys know I'm a huge fan of the rail tail, and I think it would look fantastic too. Now I think we are, at this point, I think I'm going to black it out unless you guys convince me I should, you know, use the rail tail and go with chrome hardware. Now, if we want to black it out, the other option we have is Vega trim. I've used these guys before as well. Very high-end bridge, basically designed for maximum articulation. So, same kind of system. There's a rail. I'll see if I can grab that one. And it's more of like a blade system. So again, it will mount perfectly on those 6 holes. And when we combine it with our pick guard here, it's kind of like test fit it here. Thankfully, on this cheap eBay pick guard, all the holes line up. So there you go. That's kind of how that would look. You basically have the rail that mounts in there, and then you put your trim on that. So I've got this backwards. I just need to flip it around because we need the blade area. And so basically it would look something like this. Obviously it's just set in there. But yeah, so that's our other option. If we want to black it out, we could go Vega trim. And I think, yeah, as I mentioned, if you need a trim that's like ultra expressive, this is the one that you need to use. If you want something that's more like a hardtail and you don't, you know, use the trim as much, that rail tail is just absolutely awesome. I think it's even better than blocking your trim just because of the mass of that brass. So we've got those 2 options. Again, let me know which one you'd like to see me use, and off we go. Now, thankfully, when it comes to pickups, pretty much anything will fit in a Yamaha. It just depends on which pickguard you get. Obviously, we've got humbucker single, just to kind of, you know, keep the stock layout. It's super versatile, so should be good. Now, we've got some Lambertones here. I've used their humbuckers in the past, never used their single coils, so the guys sent me over a set. So thanks so much for supporting the build, you guys. That's hugely appreciated. So anyway, we've got some single coils here. Check this out. Beautiful. And these are the triple shots. Okay, so obviously we are going to be using the neck and the middle, but I should show you guys the bridge just because I thought this was so cool. Almost have like a T-style heavy-duty plate on the bottom of the bridge to kind of give it, you know, a little bit of extra zing. So I thought that was super cool. So the triple shot set looks really good. And then I salvaged this one from a previous build. So this is also a Lambertones. This is the Crema. So I grabbed this out of one of my other builds, so we're going to use it with the Yamaha. Should be pretty deadly. I always liked the way this one looked. So yeah, and I know from the previous build that I like the way it sounds. So anyway, we might rock this one in the bridge. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking for pickups. It's going to give us tons of like great Alnico clarity. It's going to sound night and day from the stock pickups in the Yamaha. So that's what I'm thinking at this point. We'll see when we go to actually assemble it, you know, what it sounds like and what it looks like. So that's the parts list we're using to create our ultimate Pacifica. Should be a lot of fun. I'm going to do a little bit of prep work between this video and the assembly video. I'm going to put in all the shielding paint. It needs a couple coats and it needs to dry. So we're going to do that right away so it's ready for the next video, and maybe some of the neck work fretwork and rolling the fingerboard. I might do some of that as well. We'll do some befores and afters, of course, so you can see the difference. Should be a lot of fun. I'm going to keep a running tally of the parts I use in the video description below, so if you guys need to know the parts numbers or the exact things that I used for a perfect fit on the Pacifica, we're going to do that. Other than that, hope you guys enjoy the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. The rest of my information will be down in the video description below. Have yourself a great day.